The Arizona Cardinals have suffered through some really bad offensive line play over the years, and the 2022 season was the worst yet. A combination of injuries and suspect depth all coalesced into one giant train wreck. But a new day has dawned, and Michael Bidwell has hired a general manager from outside the organization for the first time since Buddy Ryan. More importantly, his new GM, Monti Ossenfort, cut his teeth with the Patriots organization, an organization that has a track record for finding good offensive linemen all throughout the draft, from the early rounds to late rounds and even undrafted free agents. Moreover, Michael Bidwell in multiple interviews has reiterated the team's commitment to building the offensive line. There's a lot of work to be done, but there's at least reason for hope. Hope that an organization that's been kind for nearly a decade just might dig itself out of that hole in which it resides. Now, the Cardinals may look to free agency to help shore up the offensive line, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to focus on the draft. But when we look to the draft, the question is, which offensive linemen are the Cardinals going to target? What are they going to be looking for? And in which rounds are they going to pick offensive linemen? Well, in terms of the which round question, I addressed that in a previous video where I looked at the draft strategy I think Monti Ossenfort's going to employ. The short version can be summarized by this chart. Now in this chart, we see the draft picks that were made by the Patriots and the Titans during the time that Monti Ossenfort was in their front offices. While he may deviate from this to some degree, there is reason to think he's going to be influenced by what he learned in those organizations. Now, when it comes to the offensive line, there's a couple things to know. First, tackles were taken all throughout the draft, both early and late. So if Ossenfort does draft in the way that they did in these organizations, he could take a tackle anywhere. But interior offensive linemen weren't taken till round 3 or later. Now again, there's no guarantee Ossenfort's gonna follow this, but if we're trying to narrow it down and project what he's gonna do, this is a reasonable thing to take into account. But even if we let this be our guide for where they're gonna select different positions, the question of which offensive linemen they're gonna target is another question altogether. And the key to answering this question is to try to get a sense for the offense that's going to be put in place by Jonathan Gannon and his offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing. Now, we don't know exactly what Petzing's going to do, and like Ossenfort, he's probably going to add his own touches to the things he's learned. But a good starting point is to look at the offense where he came from, the Cleveland Browns. Petzing most recently served as the quarterback coach of the Cleveland Browns under head coach Kevin Stefanski. Now, Stefanski runs a run-heavy offense that uses a lot of wide zone concepts in the running game and West Coast concepts in the passing game. And when it comes to what a team is looking for in offensive linemen, the run game tends to be more impactful. It's in the run game where you see more variation in what's asked of offensive linemen. So we're going to want to look at what's involved with a wide zone running scheme. And to do that, we're going to look at a couple plays from the Cleveland Browns last season. When this play gets going, the first thing you see is that the offensive linemen pull and lead towards the outside with the running back following. The running back's job in this play is to follow the blocking and watch for a cutback lane, someplace where he can put his foot in the dirt, head upfield, and get a big gain. Now in this particular play, there wasn't a lot to work with, but you see that he followed the blocks and tried to cut upfield. Now with this next play, we see that once again, the blocking and the running back pull towards the outside, and Nick Chubb looks for a cutback lane, but this time he's able to make much more out of the play and gets a huge gain. Now, the thing that should stand out here is that the offensive linemen in this system need to be athletic enough to pull and good at picking up blocks on the move and at the second level. That is blocking defensive backs and linebackers downfield. And for this reason, you tend to see faster, more athletic offensive linemen. Now, I'm sure Petzing will run other concepts like inside zone and things like that, but any offensive lineman that's going to be in this offense is going to need to be capable of running these kinds of plays. So equipped with this information, I looked at the draft profiles of every offensive lineman on PFF's big board to try to identify players that would be a good fit for a wide zone offense. Some of the things I looked for were direct mentions that this offensive lineman is a good fit for a wide zone, or discussion of how they're good at pulling, picking up blocks at the second level, how they're good in space, other things like that that would be indicators that they're a good fit. So based on these criteria, I came up with a list of offensive linemen that I think are a fit for this system and might be candidates to be drafted by the Cardinals. Now, among the prospects that are likely to be selected in the first 2 days of the draft, this list included Peter Skoronski, Broderick Jones, Terrence Johnson Jr., Luke Whippler, John Michael Schmitz, Cody Mock, Matthew Bergeron, Joe Tippmann, and Jalen Duncan. Now on day 3, this included Tyler Steen, Olusegun Oluwatimi, Chandler Zavala, Blake Freeland, Carter Warren, Luke Haggard, Braden Daniels, McClendon Curtis, Caleb Chandler, Caleb Murphy, Richard Gourage, TJ Bass, Connor Galvin, Jackson Kirkland, Wanya Morris, Nick Saldiveri, Alex Forsyth, Earl Bostic Jr., Spencer Anderson, Malasala Umave Laulu, Dalton Wagner, Brett Lang, Henry Bainavalu, Kadeem Telford, Trevor Reed, and Ryan Hayes. Now, it's possible there are offensive linemen that didn't make this list that the Cardinals will look at. There are other offensive linemen who could function in this system but just aren't ideal fits. But ultimately, I think Monti Ossenfort is more likely to use draft picks on players that do fit the offense that they're going to run. So now that we've got this list, I wanted to narrow it down. I wanted to identify 10 offensive linemen that I think have the best chance to be drafted by the Arizona Cardinals. So to do that, I employed a couple different criteria. Now, the first thing I did is I looked at that draft heat map that I discussed earlier. And based on that, I limited certain offensive linemen that didn't seem like they would be consistent with Monti Ossenfort's strategy based on where they're likely to be picked. And this pained me because I had to eliminate one of my favorite draft prospects, John Michael Schmitz. If you know, you know. I also looked at some of the players we currently have on the roster and eliminated draft prospects based on prioritization of needs. More specifically, the Cardinals have 2 starting caliber left tackles in DJ Humphries and Josh Jones. And while some of the tackles in the first round might be an upgrade to these players, with all the needs on this roster, I just didn't think the Cardinals were going to use an early pick on a left tackle when they already have a couple guys who can start there and have so many other needs that they could address with those early picks. So this resulted in just about every first round prospect being eliminated from consideration. I did, however, look at tackles on day 3 who I thought could either be depth pieces or hopefully become starting right tackles. But if you were hoping the Cardinals were going to draft a tackle in the first round, I just don't think that's going to happen. Now, another criteria that I included was one that's based on our quarterback. As fans in the media like to remind us, our quarterback is short. So I eliminated some of the taller prospects from consideration. Now, I don't necessarily think the Cardinals are going to take players off their board because they're tall. I just think all things being equal, they're likely to look at shorter offensive line prospects in the hopes that that can help with Kyler Murray's vision of the field. Now, I might be overthinking this some, and it's absolutely possible the Cardinals draft a very tall offensive lineman. But when I'm trying to narrow it down to a list of 10, I needed to find whatever reasonable criteria I could. And finally, after narrowing down the list by all of those criteria, I looked at the prospects that remained and picked 10 that I think have qualities or traits that are going to be attractive to the Cardinals. But something to keep in mind, this is not a top 10 list of the best offensive line prospects in this draft. Rather, this is a list of the 10 offensive line prospects I think have the best chance of being selected by the Cardinals based on Monti Ossenfort's strategies that I think he's going to employ and the offensive scheme that I think Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing are going to use. Before we dive into the list of 10 prospects, if you're enjoying this video, please do me a favor and click like and subscribe. Without further ado, the first prospect on our list is Tyler Steen. Tyler Steen was a starting left tackle for the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's 6'5", 315, 22 years old, and is likely to be an early day 3 selection, though I could see him going up into late day 2. He has the athleticism and range as a blocker necessary to play wide zone, and as a player for Alabama, you know he's got the pedigree in terms of physical traits and that he's played against good competition. If the Cardinals were to draft Steen, I'd expect they'd see him as the starting right tackle sooner rather than later. Next up is Olusegun Olatimi, a center out of Michigan. He's 6'3", 307, 23 years old, and he's also an early day 3 prospect. He's smart, a 4-year starter with good athleticism. He can pull and block at the second level. I really like him as a potential starter of the future at center. Next up is probably my favorite offensive line prospect in this entire draft class, not named John Michael Schmitz. Chandler Zavala, guard out of North Carolina State. He's 6'5", 325, 23 years old. He's projected as an early day 3 pick, but I could easily see him climb boards and get into day 2. He's smart, he's strong, he's athletic, and the thing I love about him is he offers the best combination of a guard who can execute the wide zone concepts and also line up in power running concepts and impose his will. Most of the prospects you look at that are a good fit for wide zone concepts don't have the kind of strength Zavala has. That really makes him stand out as a prospect. The next prospect on my list is Braden Daniels, a tackle guard out of Utah. He's 6'4", 297, 22 years old, and also a day 3 prospect. Daniels offers positional flexibility, having played guard and both tackle positions during his time at Utah. His athleticism and quickness will allow him to thrive in a wide zone scheme. And with the Cardinals, I see him as someone who could be either a guard or a tackle. The next prospect on my list is Carter Warren, a tackle out of Pittsburgh. He's 6'5", 325 pounds, 24 years old, and also a day 3 prospect. Warren has the tools to become a starting tackle in the NFL, and he does a good job on long poles. The biggest issue with Warren is he only played 4 games last season due to an undisclosed injury, so his medical report is going to be important for his draft stock. But if he is healthy, he has the potential to be a starting right tackle sooner rather than later. The next prospect on my list is Trevor Reed, an offensive tackle out of Louisville. He's 6'5", 307, 22 years old, again a day 3 prospect. Reed is a good athlete whose athleticism allows him to operate well in space as a zone blocker. He needs to add strength to play at the NFL level, but that's something that can be addressed with the strength and conditioning staff. With the Cardinals, I think Reed projects as a swing tackle who could develop into a starter. The next prospect on my list is right tackle Warren McClendon out of Georgia. He's 6'4", 300 pounds, 21 years old, probably a day 3 prospect as well. McClendon was the starting right tackle at Georgia, so he has experience playing against high-level competition in the SEC. He isn't quite as athletic as some of the other tackles we've discussed, but he does play with a high motor, is capable of operating in a wide zone scheme, and has good play strength. He doesn't offer the positional flexibility of some other prospects, but I think some team is going to draft McClendon, and he's going to be their starting right tackle probably his rookie season. The next prospect on my list is tackle guard McClendon Curtis out of University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. McClendon is 6'6", 328 pounds, 23 years old, also a day 3 prospect. Curtis doesn't move quite as well as some of the other prospects included on this list, but he does play with urgency. He also offers positional flexibility, having played both guard and tackle at Chattanooga. I think he profiles as a right tackle for the Cardinals based on his height and strength, and it's also worth noting that Justin Mello of the Draft Network reported that the Cardinals were among a list of teams that had exceptional meetings with Curtis. Next up is guard Caleb Chandler out of Louisville. Chandler's 6'4", 297, 24 years old, and also a day 3 prospect. Chandler has a kind of athleticism to pull and make blocks in space, and has a kind of high IQ that I think Ossenfort and the Cardinals coaching staff will covet. Like many prospects, he needs to add strength at the next level to maintain his blocks, but that's the kind of thing that can be fixed once he's in the building. The last prospect on my list of 10 is center Alex Forsyth out of Oregon. He's 6'4", 312, 24 years old, and again a day 3 prospect. Forsyth offers a good combination of athleticism, intelligence, and experience. He moves well and is effective operating zone blocking schemes, and is good in the technical aspects of playing center. Now, one knock that some scouting summaries mention is that he does seem to have some issues with pre-snap penalties, so that'll be something the Cardinals would need to look at. Altogether, Forsyth seems to project more as a backup, but with Monti Ossenfort's experience helping the Patriots identify late-round gems, if Ossenfort sees something he likes in Forsyth, it's possible he could have starter upside for the Cardinals. Now, just to review that list, it's Tyler Steen, tackle out of Alabama, Olusegun Oluwatimi, center out of Michigan, Chandler Zavala, guard out of North Carolina State, Braden Daniels, tackle guard out of Utah, Carter Warren, tackle out of Pittsburgh, Trevor Reed, tackle out of Louisville, Warren McClendon, tackle out of Georgia, McClendon Curtis, tackle guard out of Chattanooga, Caleb Chandler, guard out of Louisville, and Alex Forsyth, center out of Oregon. So there we have it. The 10 offensive line prospects I think have the best chance of being selected by the Cardinals in the 2023 NFL Draft. If you want to learn more about the draft strategy that I think Monti Ossenfort is going to use, check out this video right here. It's a video where I explain that heat chart that I used in this video. So which offensive line prospects do you hope the Cardinals select? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Cardinal Rule.